Well, we're now going to another area of traditional media which is also undergoing a total revolution. And it's my great pleasure to introduce today Dr. Mathias Doepfner, who is the chairman and the CEO of Axel Springer, which, as you know, is the largest publisher in Germany, with literally hundreds of magazine titles, newspapers, and just about everything else you can think of, including the very first newspaper to be published in Second World. We're very pleased to hear from Mathias here his perspectives on the future as that whole organization begins to reinvent itself. We were talking earlier about the cannibalization of one part of the business in order that something might survive. Mathias, please come and tell us what does. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, or good afternoon. A couple of months ago, I made a trip to the West Coast with some management colleagues from Axel Springer to visit Google, because we wanted to find out whether the newspaper journalism has any future. So we arrived at the campus of the company, and we've seen this dinosaur, a sculpture of a dinosaur on the campus, and I thought it's perhaps a good idea, as a representative of a dinosaur industry, to have a little photo in front of that wonderful dinosaur. So there came a beautiful lady along working for Google, and I asked her whether she would be willing to take my mobile and take a photo. And she smiled and said, yes, of course, no problem. Where are you from? I said, well, I'm from Germany. She asked, so what business are you in? I said, oh, we are in the newspaper business. And then she said, newspaper business? Ah, I heard about that. That's this print thing. So it was a good start to learn about the future of newspaper journalism, and quite difficult to respond. Clearly, this is not the answer on that challenge. So we learned the Google lessons. This is a Google chart, and we believe that the gap between ad spend and media consumption will be bridged, and it's only a question of time. So we have to prepare ourselves. Since we don't want to stick with ink and sync, we have this transition process ahead of us, or you could also say we are in the middle of that transition process. And it is clear that this is a challenge for the entire company, because every employee is asking the question, will the newspaper journalism die out, or has it a future, and if so, how? So the good news is there is an old law, it's called Riepel's Law. Mr. Riepel was an editor of a local newspaper in Germany, and in the year 1913 he has written a doctoral thesis, and the law that he has defined there, called Riepel's Law, has proven to be true until today. The theory is very simple. He says media progress is not a process of substitution, it's a process of cumulation, meaning a new media product, a new category of journalism is not replacing an old category, it's just adding something new. And that has proven to be true. The oral history, the oral story has not been replaced by books. Books have not been replaced by newspapers. Newspapers not by radio. Radio not by TV. And TV has not been replaced by the internet. That's the good news. The bad news is that if you look, for example, to the music business, you find other examples. The old record has, of course, been replaced by the CD, and the CD has been replaced by MP3. So another example is the video that has been replaced by the DVD and so on. So the question is Riepel's Law still true? I think yes, absolutely. And what we learned from these two experiences is simply that it is a big difference whether we are talking about a technical medium, a transfer medium, or whether we are talking about a content medium, a creative medium. So if it is just the technique that is different, then the better technique will replace the older, the worse technique. That's the case for DVD and for CD and records. But the product, the creative medium, the music remains the same. And so if the journalism, the internet journalism, is the same than newspaper journalism, then internet journalism will automatically replace newspaper journalism. Now, I'm deeply convinced, and I would be interested in discussing that with you, that internet journalism is something completely different than newspaper journalism. Two different worlds, two different principles. And for that reason, I'm convinced that newspaper journalism will remain, but the newspaper as a technical transfer medium might be replaced one day. And we see already the first prototypes of electronic paper, which is real paper. I mean, not in the sense of a laptop screen or a little mobile device, which is too small to read, but a real flexible, small, thin product device that is easy to use and one day will be a mass market product. If that's the case, then a newspaper as a paper might be replaced step by step. But the product, the substance of our business, journalism, newspaper journalism, will remain. We, of course, learned our lessons, and I think the company is under a transition process which is really very radical. And I think one of the most important aspects here is that we do not think that by just implementing one segment of the company, one team in the company that is responsible for the digital media, for the future of the business, and all the rest of the company is working for the past, and for that reason against the department that is responsible for the future, for the digital business. We came to the conclusion that everybody in the company has to be responsible to transform its business, its brand, its content, its consumer groups into the digital world. With this, the responsibility is on much larger shoulders. Everybody has this responsibility, and I think this works. That is one very important element. The second one is that we simply ended the discussion, what is more important, the print story or the online story. We have a clear philosophy that says online first. The strength of the online medium is the speed of the information. So as soon as something is available, a news and investigative story will be sent online. And we are working in an integrated newsroom where different kinds of journalists representing different qualities and different kinds of journalism, online journalism and print journalism, national newspapers are different than regional newspapers. We have built a group of journalists working together in this integrated newsroom and working under this premise of online first. Now, of course, we have defined, as every company did, our online strategy. It's on three pillars: the transfer of existing brands. So every brand that we own in the traditional print media business has to be transformed into a working business model in the online world, not only as a marketing model, but as a real money-making business model. Then the second pillar is the transfer of classified ads, which is a very important revenue source of traditional newspaper companies. In our case, fortunately, only 10% of our revenues, and with that we are much more in an attacker mood than in a mood of somebody who wants to protect its business, because we have a lot more to win than to lose here. And then the second pillar is that we are simply investing into completely new business models that have not been accessible to a traditional media company. And now on the next chart, we just show you how good we are. It's the typical we are the greatest chart, so that's what we did in the last 12 months. I spare you the details. I should only mention that we launched Avastar. That is the first virtual newspaper in the Second Life. And we think it's not bullshit, it's wonderful, and we appreciate very much the principle of Second Life, that everything is virtual except the money that you make is real. And talking about money, I also should mention that out of our 5 most important and biggest online activities, 4 are already profitable and making a lot of money. Now, the question is, how is the content changing? How is the substance of our business, the journalism, developing, and how do we have to adapt to the new content trends? Of course, the buzzword of the present is user-generated content, and we appreciate user-generated content. It's wonderful. It's opening new dimensions and opening new doors. It's adding quality to the journalism. And it is wonderful if you have online the intelligence of all your users to report about a recent event faster and better than ever. It is broadening new academic horizons, deepening knowledge. Wikipedia is a good example for that. So it's an enrichment for the online journalism, obviously. It's very important. It's a key element of the online journalism. But not only, it can also positively influence the traditional print journalism. And this is an example here, the number 1414 is meanwhile the best known telephone number in Germany. Bild Zeitung, that is reaching every day 12 million readers, is asking all its 12 million readers if they have seen something interesting, whether it's a story, news, they should call us. And if they have made a photo with their mobile of something that is interesting, and it can be a celebrity that they have met somewhere, but it can be also very serious stuff. It can be, for example, a train accident where Bild had on its front page the first exclusive photo about this train crash because one of the readers made this photo. So it is from entertainment to serious information, serious journalism, and enrichment for the newspaper that is using its 12 million readers in order to generate user-created content. That's the good part of it. But as always, it's not only good. There is not only the swarm intelligence, there is also swarm stupidity from time to time. Simply the fact that every user can participate and can do something does not necessarily mean that some of the users are always right. And I was quite shocked to hear from the famous blogger Bob Basic, who made a poll that 9 out of 10 bloggers are bribable, are willing to write about a company or about a service something favorable if they get enough money for that. So that means you have not only the perfect moral in the new world and the advantages, you have also the downside. That is normal and that belongs to reality. But I think in some it is of course a lot more opportunity than disadvantage or threat for the journalism. But, and this is my final chart and my most important point, I really think that we should absolutely not try to present the development of user-generated content as a kind of replacement of old media content categories of the, I would call it, guided content. I think there is user-generated content that is very valuable, and there is and will always be guided content that is very valuable, and one has to understand the different principles of the online journalism and of the print journalism, of the newspaper journalism, whether it's on paper or an electronic paper, I don't care, as I said. The online journalism is a vertical thing. It's going deep. You have the possibility to get access to the deepest level of specialized information in the shortest amount of time. You have a very anti-authoritarian structure of content because, as we know, everybody can participate. It's not somebody who is guiding its users. The user are, in a way, guiding themselves. That's the principle of online journalism, and we love and we appreciate that. The principle of newspaper journalism is the contrary. It's guided journalism. The professional journalist, it's guiding its audience, and it is a horizontal medium. It's broadening your horizon. In a way, you have a lot of topics that you are reading where you have never known that you could be interested in. Or let me put it in another term. The business model of Google is that you get the information you were looking for. The business model of a newspaper is that you get information you were not looking for, but you are interested in, and you learned that it's interesting and valuable for you. That is the big role of newspaper journalism, of guided journalism, of professional journalism, that it really confronts you with new horizons and elements of information that you would never have been interested in, that you would never have put into a search machine because you simply didn't think that it could be of any interest for you. And so I think this is a thing that one should not play against each other. One should not say, well, it's this or that. It is both, and it should be both. And in a way, we are here on the Zeitgeist forum, and I think talking about the opportunities and the beauty of user-generated content is not Zeitgeist, it's not avant-garde, it's pretty much mainstream. So I really would like to underline that I'm deeply convinced that whereas the user-generated content is developing fast and is an enrichment, it will not replace the professional journalism. It's something that we will need in the future too. And a good example for that is our most successful colleague and media entrepreneur, Rupert Murdoch. I mean, he played it extremely smart. I'm really impressed, I have to say. He was talking down the newspaper sector for a month. Yeah? He was bad-mouthing it so long until the multiples and the prices of newspaper assets went down. And then suddenly he's making a very gracious offer for Dow Jones for the Wall Street Journal. It's a very good way to do it, but it clearly shows that, I mean, I interpret what he wants to do. He wants to establish a multimedia chain of business information that is print, TV, online. I think that's the way to do it. And for this enterprise, he needs a strong brand. So outdated and out-fashioned and old-fashioned branding seems to be, but he seems to need a credible brand. And he seems to need the very credible, professional, journalistic content as a basis for this platform. And I think that's a wonderful example that we should not confront these two things. We should merge it and we should use the advantages of both, because in the end, it's not that much a question whether it's user-generated content or guided content. It's the question whether it's a good story and whether people like to listen to that story. And to conclude and to illustrate that, I want to tell you a true story about Soweto, the township, where there was only one cinema, because they didn't want the people to go to movie theaters, so there was only one cinema. And although it was relatively expensive, it was always packed with people. Everybody wanted to be there. And then suddenly, a group of people that didn't get in decided that they are sending only one of them, who is the best storyteller, to go in and see the movie and then come out and stand in front of the people who are interested in and tell the story of the movie. And this storyteller was so talented, he was able to give such a charismatic version of the movie that his audience got bigger and bigger every day. And then he started to dress up. He was wearing costumes, and he was very, charismatic and full of emotion. And he was telling every day the story got better and better and better. And one day, and in the end, and it's really true, the movie theater was almost empty, and everybody was standing in front of this beautiful storyteller, which says, it's not a question of user-generated content. Was it user-generated? Was it guided content? We don't know, and we don't mind, because what counts is the best content. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Can I just ask one question, which I know that a lot of people will be thinking about, is this. You know, we all understand the movement into the online channel. But the difficulty is making money from it. I mean, the BBC is not charging for its pages. Most newspapers online are not charging for their pages. The Financial Times has a great dilemma. It's trying to charge for pages, but the pages they charge for are not being read, at least read by virtually no one. Well, some, but not very many. So how do we make money out of these online pages? And can we make enough money either by subscription or by advertising to replace the huge revenues that we have had from traditional print?
So first of all, I mean, in the end, quality and the mass audience that you are reaching with your quality, with the quality of your content, is decisive, and then will lead to advertising revenues. And at the moment, we see that the figures that are achieved in the online advertising business are higher than the figures that have been forecasted a couple of years ago, where we all thought, well, this is completely exaggerated. That's point number one. But I think this is not always enough, and the challenge is to really define own and creative business models. It's not enough to just transform an existing print model which says, well, we have content and we charge for advertising. I think that's not enough. So I will give you a concrete example. Our most successful online site is Bild T-Online. It's reaching more than 500 million page impressions meanwhile, and it is very profitable. 3 years ago, it was neither profitable nor big. So we were really in deep shit, and we thought perhaps we have to close it, which would have been a big embarrassment to close the online side of such a big brand. And so we talked to the management and we said that we thought that paid content will work. It's not going to work. We thought that banner advertising will be a great business. It's not enough. So you have 3 months of time, develop new resources of revenues, otherwise we have to close it down. And then they did something that said, well, let's try to use this platform as a platform to market products that we brand as Volksprodukte, we would be translated people's products. So as Bild is a very popular brand, stands for mass market and for accessible information at reasonable prices. We thought that perhaps this brand credibility might transfer to the products that we are selling on this platform in partnership with manufacturers. So that's what we did. We had a spot business, 1 week, one product. A people's laptop, a people's mobile phone, you name it, a people's bicycle. And this, I mean, was booming. And until today, it is 1/3 of the revenues with a growing tendency. Okay. And that is something that would never have been accessible as a revenue stream for a traditional print media. And that shows and proves that the online world is for us, of course, a lot more opportunity than threat.
And of course, at the same time that we've seen newspapers have reducing revenue, we've seen this explosion of magazines.
That is true, yeah. That is absolutely true.
In the print.
Well, but I would say the simple quantity of titles does not necessarily mean that they are all profitable. Yes, but nevertheless, let's stick to the optimistic part of the message.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.